Build up to Budget 2021. I've got David Gazzard from DPG Advisory and also Ben Oquist, Executive Director at the Australia Institute. Before we look at the budget, let's look at India and this travel ban. Ben, the government says that the numbers that were arriving, that they need to recalibrate, and then from May 15, they'll focus on repatriating citizens. Do you think that that is going to be a largely positive response from the electorate towards that decision?
I don't know what the electorate thinks, and I don't mean to say I don't care, but the important thing is doing what is right here, and this has been a debacle. Having Australian citizens shut out of Australia, you've got everybody from the Human Rights Commission, UN, Malcolm Turnbull, Andrew Bolt, Matt Canavan, criticising it, and rightly criticising the treatment of Australian citizens. I mean, this is taking border protection just way too far. I said last week it wasn't just the Prime Minister's fault. He's been aided and abetted by state premiers who are not speaking up for their citizens either. And it's a disgrace. It's shameful. It's a really black mark on Australia. And I'm hearing the government thinks it's popular and it's going well, but it's wrong.
But it has done it before, hasn't it not? With the various cases last year where flights were shut down and so on? We
didn't have this systematic a shutdown and having 6,000 or more Australians locked out of their own country. At a time, of course, it's because the situation in India is horrendous. 380,000 new cases and over 3,000 deaths a day. But that makes it all the more worse. These are Australian citizens in trouble. The Australian government should be doing more of them. Now there's talk of repatriation flights. This was a terrible, terrible decision. It marks this government down, but it marks this nation down, and they've got to do something about rectifying it.
David Gazzard?
I 100% disagree with that. Let me tell you, I've worked for a Prime Minister that has done stuff from time to time in John Howard that was unpopular. You do not have the luxury to make decisions on the basis of a few people overseas, even though you sympathise with them. I don't think the Prime Minister or the government at all wants those people to be stuck in that circumstance. But the PM has got one thing he's got to do, and that is the security and health of the 25 million people that live here. Now, what do we know? We know the virus doesn't respect traditional ways of doing things. What is lawful? Where it goes, what borders are open, what borders are closed, whether you're playing cricket, whether you're just there on a holiday. It doesn't respect that. Once it gets into Australia, we know the weak links on this. The weak links are in quarantine, where there are caps. If it goes out into the community, what happens then? The states then shut down. That causes harm for millions of Australian citizens here for their economic well-being, for their health. The Prime Minister does not have the luxury of taking into account minority interests in this, because this is a global health crisis and everyone needs to make accommodations for that. We've done that over the course of the last year. There have been millions of people that have been locked out of the places they work, locked out of their states when they've been away on holiday or on business. We've all had to accommodate that, and it's the same situation here, whether you're on a beach in the Maldives or in a hotel in India, or you went over for a wedding or whatever.
Barry O'Farrell said, it's now 900 vulnerable Australian citizens overseas. These are Australian citizens. The government has a responsibility to protect them as well. And I think it's shocking hypocrisy to have got stuck into the States all this time for closing their borders and saying we've got to shut down as soon as there's one case. A government has a responsibility to its Australian citizens. It should be managing quarantine better. Last week, the Prime Minister was saying a hotel quarantine is 99.9% effective, and that's why we should trust it. This week, Australian citizens are shut out of their own country.
What is the decision today out of WA? They're considering shutting down to New South Wales over one case in Sydney.
Exactly.
So this is the weak link in the chain. So you've got to make decisions. You've got to take stock of what is reality, Ben.
And what's the Prime Minister doing introducing these biosecurity laws that say people are going to go to jail or face big fines, and then the next day saying, oh no, don't worry, we're introducing these, but people won't be copying these fines. It's completely irresponsible. One, for the Prime Minister to have done it, but then for two, to say it's up to him that the law is not going to be enforced. It shows that he's wrong and he's making a mess.
Those laws have been in place now for a year. that were introduced in state parliaments. So we've all gone through those laws being enacted by state governments for a year, and no one has gone to jail. They also faced, if you went from Wodonga to Albury, you face jail time and you face an $11,000 fine. So that hasn't happened, right? I think we've got to take him on his word. The fact the penalty is there doesn't mean it's going to be used, but it shows how serious they take the disease.
And I think this suggestion is well too cute that he's doing it because it's right but not popular. Meanwhile, the government is briefing out that they're comfortable with this because it is popular.
Well,
it's not true to say that.
Well, even to be honest, as you know, you've worked around this place a lot. That's how everything. There are moral questions. There are constitutional questions, and there are always political questions with everything in this place.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I just don't like the suggestion that they're doing the right thing, even though it's
sometimes it overlaps. But anyway, I'm not going to get into it again because we have to wrap up.
Now they face a legal challenge,
Yep.
and next week moves in the Parliament to try and overturn it. This has got a long way to running, and they're making a mess of it.
Ben Oquist, David Gazzard, thanks. Robust discussion this afternoon. Appreciate it. Lots to explore in that complex space.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.